Hey there. Thank you for joining us for School Psych Podcast. Great topic tonight. And I am for sure outnumbered with Connecticut people. But my name is Rachel, and I'm a school psychologist working in Maryland. I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca to tell everybody about how you can participate tonight. Rebecca?
Hi, everybody. So you can participate by commenting. If you're watching us on YouTube Live, you can comment right alongside the video screen by logging in, signing into your YouTube Google account. And you can also use the hashtag #PsychedPodcast on Twitter and comment or message me on either of the Facebook pages, School Psyched, Your School Psychologist, or the School Psych Podcast page. I'll be looking out for notifications and looking forward to hearing all of your questions and thoughts. And now, my fellow Connecticutier, I looked that word up and I forgot it. Here's Eric.
Hi, everybody. I'm Eric, and also in Connecticut, and our esteemed guest is also in Connecticut. So would like to introduce Dr. Heidi MacDonald. She is a school psychologist in Connecticut and earned her doctorate at at Penn State University. She currently works at an intermediate school with grades 3 through 5. And prior to moving to Connecticut, she worked in the state of Pennsylvania. This is her 20th year in the field, and she loves her job and school psychology and strives to be a piece of the puzzle at her school. At work, she enjoys assessment, individual and group counseling and consultation, and runs a number of extracurricular clubs, such as Environmental Club, Sign Language Club, and Drama Club. She's also the school's Title IX coordinator and keeper of the school's 2 emotional support guinea pigs. I'm interested in hearing about these little fellows. And an
axolotl.
Axolotl, which is a salamander with gills, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I still will struggle to pronounce that. Outside of work, she enjoys spending time with her husband, who's also a school psychologist, and their 15-year-old daughter. And she loves volunteering on a number of committees, working out, cooking, DIY projects, and thrift store finds, which I think a lot of us can relate to. I know I can. So that's exciting. Rebecca also posted a poll. And so Heidi's going to speak to us tonight about words to live by, some advice for school psychologists. And our poll was, as an early career school psychologist, what's a topic that you wish you knew more about when entering the field, whether you were thinking about yourself in the past or even currently in your career? And our 2 top choices were academic interventions and behavioral interventions. We also had risk assessment and crisis and counseling goals running behind. So we're excited to talk about words to live by for school psychologists. I think we all sometimes, work in a vacuum and sometimes need to figure out how we fit into that puzzle and what are some words of advice that we can learn from Dr. MacDonald tonight and take back with us. So Heidi, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I am super excited about this. So I am going to show my lack of mastery with regard to technology and hope that I can do this screen share. So I think, tell me if I'm right.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Very nice. You did it.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. So it is, I guess, an understatement to say that I love my career. And this is my 20th year in the field, which is hard to believe. And I would say that I love my career even more now than I did when I first started. I think I was blessed to sort of fall into this. I did not have experience with a school psychologist when I was in school. I'm sure we had one, but I don't know who that person is or was. And just in sort of this journey of trying to figure out what might be the best fit for me in the psychology field, I was fortunate enough to work with a few school psychologists in one of my jobs in between actually grad school and grad school again, and figured out that school psychology might be the way to go. And I am so incredibly lucky and so thankful that I found that. So I really do feel like this is a perfect fit for me. So that's me, school psychologist words to live by. And I guess the tagline for this would be, I have made every one of these mistakes. And my thinking in putting this together, a number of years ago, I had been contacted, I think through maybe a NASP listserv or something. There was a university supervisor that was looking for some working mentors for interns. So the interns, school psych interns, had a placement somewhere, and then they also had these virtual mentors. And so this particular student that I was matched up with, every week I would get a fairly scripted question to answer, just different maybe practices or policies or opinions on things, and we would just communicate via email. And then the very last week of the semester, the question was, what else would you like to tell me about this field? And I don't sleep much at all. And so I do a lot of my work in the middle of the night. And I remember sitting on my couch at about 2 or 3 in the morning, typing this email to this young lady. And it ended up being paragraphs and paragraphs long, about just words of wisdom that I really would like to impart on her. So that's how this presentation sort of came to be.
Very cool. I feel like you could make a book too.
I would love that someday, I think. Yeah, that'd be great. So like I said, I have made every single one of these mistakes that is in this PowerPoint. And to be honest, and I think total transparency, none of this is empirically validated or researched. This is just really my experience in the field. So my hope was that my hindsight might be your foresight, especially for students who are just starting out in the field. And also with the fine print of, this is my 20th year. So I have the flexibility to do some of the things that I'm going to talk about that I did not have in my first 1 to 5 years, probably. So I think we're just going to sort of, maybe there's one piece of this that you can take away, and that's really my only hope. My big philosophy about my job is to just be a piece of the puzzle. I remember so much in graduate school, the professors talking about how we were at very high risk of just becoming testing drones. And I have attempted to craft my career so that testing is certainly a piece, and a very important piece, but also to become a piece of the puzzle within my school. I am fortunate enough to be in one school, which was not the case when I was in Pennsylvania. When I did my internship in central Pennsylvania, and then the 4 years after that, when I remained in that district, on a good year, I had 5 schools. On a really rough year, I had 6. So you couldn't even get to each one of them for a full day out of the week. And it was hard to be a piece of the puzzle in any of those schools, given just the time constraints. So I'm in one school now and can do a lot of different things. And I really, really enjoy that part of it. So, okay, so here we go. One of the things that I try to do all the time is to slow down, because I feel like regardless of how many schools you have or how many hundreds or thousands of kids are on your caseload, we are all running at an incredible rate of speed. And I attempt to smile at kids, learn their names, say hello to them in the hallway, acknowledge when a kid has gotten a haircut. On a Friday, when some of my little guys are wearing their football jerseys to school, I ask, do you have a game this weekend? And then on Monday, when I see them, I ask them how their game went. I feel like that is so crucial for kids to have a connection with an adult outside of their classroom teacher in the school. And I am very confident that every kid in the school knows who I am. I go into classrooms, I do classroom lessons, I introduce myself to the 3rd graders within the first couple of days of school. I go in and do a little presentation on how is Mrs. Potato Head like Dr. MacDonald. And it's a great way for the kids to, I think, see what a school psychologist does in an intermediate school, because my counterpart at the primary school, her practice is very different. And so I want them to understand how I fashion my job in my school. I'm really big on eye contact. It's actually really hard right now to not be able to see you guys. It's really funny. Eye contact is the single best way to maintain intimacy in a relationship. And so I think in this day and age, if you think of even within the families that we work with, our own families, if we think back a few generations ago where we had smaller homes and we had one television and one bathroom and one family room, we had a lot more eye contact, a lot more intimacy, a lot more opportunity to communicate with one another and to problem solve and negotiate. And now we have in many of our towns and states, very, very large homes where every child has their own bedroom, and we have maybe 4 or 5 televisions. We don't even have to negotiate anymore about what television program we're going to watch. And we have multiple bathrooms, and even husbands and wives have multiple bathrooms. So we have a real lack of intimacy and eye contact, I think, within our families. And so because I feel like that's such a crucial piece of the connection, one of the things that I always try to do when a child comes into my office, or an adult comes into my office, the way that my desk is laid out, it's like an L-shaped desk, and my computer monitor is kind of at the corner of that L. And I physically turn my body away from my computer and zone in absolutely on that person, because if not, I think the temptation is, as those notifications pop up on your computer, that you are tempted to disengage from that conversation that's happening, and your attention is drawn to something else. And it's really, really important, I think, for individuals to know that they are absolutely your priority, at least even for that small snippet of time. That being said, one of my pet peeves is people who are multitasking in meetings. And so, everybody has, in my district, Chromebooks and the iPads and all of these things. And so sitting in meetings, we have all of our eligibility meetings or PPT meetings on Wednesdays. So it is not uncommon for me to sit in on, I'm going to say, between 8 and 12 meetings on a Wednesday. It is very important for me to treat meeting number 1 and meeting number 12 exactly the same, and give the same level of attention to those parents, regardless of what time it is during the day, and not be checking my email or be distracted with doing something for the next meeting. And I think I see it a lot in meetings, that people are multitasking, and I always just try to think about pretending that this was my one meeting of the year, not my 12th meeting today or my 100th meeting so far of the year. So it's just really important, I think, for parents who are attending these meetings, when they believe that they have one time to really have an audience with the people who they are trusting their children and their children's education to, that we need to give them the utmost attention within that 45 minutes or an hour.
That is so true, and it's really hard, honestly. I know that I struggle with it for sure, and I've even, I had a situation where oftentimes I'm on my computer because I'm looking up information on the student, kind of on the go, because I've had so many meetings, and I want to see the report card, or I want to see the attendance, and so I'm pulling up that information as I'm formulating questions and whatnot. And I did have one situation where I was doing that, and afterwards the parent had made a comment to another staff member that, she didn't seem that interested. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was looking at the prior report, and I was being good in that meeting. Like, I'm not always as good as I need to be, but I was just like, it made me take a step back that, that's not the impression that I want to give, that I'm not interested in what's going on. So it's tough for sure.
I agree also. And I just last year switched from taking paper and pen notes to Google Drive notes. Yeah. And I need to write things down to remember them. But I always preface my meetings and kind of explain that these are just, things that I want to make sure to remember. And that helps me feel connected but I'll do that in every meeting, even if it's the 3rd meeting of the year with the same people, because of that. I totally agree. These are really good points. And I had never thought about the spread out homes and spaces and lack of intimacy, but I agree with that. That resonates with me too.
Yeah, I think that I do try to make a point to parents because often I'm the note taker. If we're doing IEPs, we use IEP Direct, and so I'm doing the minutes. And I will say that most of the time we have the computer connected to a projector so that as I'm typing, people see what I'm typing. And then I guess I feel a little bit better. But actually the last couple of weeks, the projector hasn't been working. And so I know that I've said, I'm just over here taking the minutes, or I'm just checking on something. But I think when, 50% of the adults in the meeting are on their computers, it really looks distracting. It looks like they're very distracted, not looking up things. So yeah, but anyway, okay. Okay, so I always think about keeping my boss happy, but who is my boss? And I have been very vocal about this with employers that kids are my boss, I think, and they might not be the ones who pay my salary, but they are the people that I am trying to make happy, which means that sometimes I have to say things in meetings or something to an adult that may not necessarily make them feel happy or feel good, because I feel as though I am the voice of the child at that meeting. And when we have a meeting coming up, I will often say to the students that I'm working with, hey, we have a meeting coming up on you, and I'm going to meet with your parents and your teachers. Is there anything that you would like me to tell them? And so just sort of really having the thought that the person that I'm working for is the child, not necessarily the district or my principal or my director, but I'm really working for the child. Remembering how words can build people up or tear them down. And I think that this is with regard to kids and adults. I had an experience when I was in elementary school that a teacher had made a comment to me, a fairly strong comment about something that I could not do. And now as an adult, and I reflect back on that situation, I think that probably that person was having a bad day, maybe took their frustrations out on me when they shouldn't have. But those words, really, even as an adult, I can recall those, and I can think about how those have impacted some of the things that I believe that I can do, or skills that I believe I have or that I don't have. So, I always really try to think about leaving my personal life at the door, and it's a clean slate as soon as I walk into school, because if something's happening in my own personal life, it's not that kid's fault, and I need to be able to give them 100% of unconditional positive regard, regardless of what's happening outside of the walls of the school. So unconditional positive regard, I think, is crucial in this role, obviously. Every child, every adult gets that, I believe, from me, and that I try to just consider where people might be and why they might be behaving in a particular way or saying certain things. I think most of the time with teachers or parents being frustrated, and it's easy to maybe pass judgment or believe that people aren't working as hard as they can or something like that, but always sort of reflecting back to my team, thinking about the experience that parent might have, or the experience that child might have, or the experience that other teacher might have, and sort of thinking about wearing their shoes, being in their shoes, how would it feel to be them? Perhaps that's the way or that's the reason why they are asking the questions that they're asking in the meeting, or that they're feel very strongly about something. So just sort of considering what their experience might be. So I think that the school psychologist must be the voice of reason, calm, compassion, and sensitivity on the team. I had a professor one time who said 99% of the time people are doing the best that they can. And I have repeated that so many times in my career to my teams, because I think that never ever does a parent or a teacher or another adult wake up in the morning and say, I'm really going to try to mess up today. I'm really going to try to do a bad job as a parent today. So people are doing the best that they can 99% of the time. And sometimes what their best is may not be what we believe their best should be. But I think that the school psychologist can help to bridge that gap. And that goes back a little bit to sometimes having to say things to the adults that may not make them feel good. You know, if a child says, I really need this to happen and I'm not getting this, to convey that information to those adults so that we are able to meet the need of that child. Prepare to work a lot. And again, my disclaimer is I am probably a very bad role model for this part, because I think I've heard a lot that teachers work approximately 53 hours per week. I can tell you I work more than that. So that's probably not what my union wants to hear. I think that any job that you try to do well is going to be hard. So you can pick any job. If you were a professional athlete, it would be a hard job if you wanted to be really good at it. If you were going to be a lawyer, it would be a hard job if you wanted to be good at it. I think to try to be good at this job that I try to be good at, it's hard work. I am still, even 20 years in, up very late, many nights doing paperwork. I do not do paperwork at school very often. I might run copies or something, but really I spend the greater majority of my day with kids, doing kid work at work. And then I leave most of my paperwork at home, or to be done at home. Probably not the popular answer, but definitely prepared to work a lot in this field.
That's interesting. I mean, I agree. And for sure, when I first started off, I worked a lot, and I did a lot of work at home. But I do tell my, the students that I work with now, I've had some practicum students, and I say, try and make kind of a barrier, or you might burn out. I mean, I felt like if I was staying super late and missing time with my kids at home, then I probably wouldn't be a very good psychologist, because I would be burnt out, I would be exhausted, I would be resentful.
Right.
So I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think that it does take a lot of work to be good at this job. But yeah, it's a fine balance for sure.
It's a very fine balance. And I think I expected that 20 years in, a lot more of it would be almost on autopilot, right? I mean, I have beautiful templates for my reports that I'm proud of, and I've worked really hard at for 20 years. And it would seem as though I could just call up a template and plug a kid's name in there, and that report should only take me an hour or something. And that's still not the case. So I am not saying that this is the way to go. And I certainly understand the idea of burnout. But it is, in order to keep up with it, I don't know how people do it and keep it within that time frame. I know I've had other supervisors say, if you only do work at work, and if you aren't able to get to it, we'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about getting more help or anything like that. That's never kind of come to fruition, and the timelines are still there. So I know that there are other psychologists that probably don't work as much as I do at night. But some of that's a choice also, because I really do enjoy doing it. So it's not an unpleasant task, I guess I would say.
That's awesome.
Keep up to date with your paperwork, right? So my mom used to always say it's easier to keep up than catch up, and she's right. And so I try to keep up as much as I can with the paperwork, which again is probably some of the reason why it's coming home with me. I do believe strongly in psychologists keeping personal notes. And I think for a while, I was trying to do formats that really didn't kind of fit for me. So I feel as though it doesn't really matter what the format is, as long as it gets done. And I do believe that most people would say if you didn't write it down, it really didn't happen. So I have more often than not had to go back to notes and say, you know, if a parent had asked how many times did I see their child within a marking period or something, that needs to be documented, because if not, then it looks like, you know, you are making up the information or you didn't see them or something. I've had a parent say, you know, my child says that they haven't seen you in the last 4 weeks. And I can easily go to my notes and say, oh, well, you know, maybe they're right, because for, you know, 1 week they were absent, and the second week they had a field trip, and the third week I was supposed to see them, I was in a meeting, and the fourth week, whatever, but it's all documented. So what I used to do when I first started out, I had a giant binder, like a 4-inch binder. And I had one sheet of paper per student in the school, organized alphabetically by last name. And I had just handwritten those notes. So everybody would have a piece of paper. And then if I saw that child on a particular day in a session, or, problem solving session, or a peer conflict or something, I would just jot that down. Then I transferred over to Microsoft OneNote, which I really, really did love. That was probably the one that fit the best for me. It's just, if you're not familiar with it, like an electronic filing cabinet. And I had one electronic page per student. What ended up happening about maybe 3 or 4 years ago was that when we did an update or something in the district, I could no longer access my OneNote from home. So then I couldn't do my daily notes within that day. And so then the notes started to really stack up, and because I didn't have time to sort of transfer them over into this electronic format. And so I got really, really behind with those. What I do now is we primarily use Microsoft Outlook Calendar in the district. And so on Friday, I print the week coming up, 1 page per day. So my whole calendar is on the first page or on the front page, and then the back page is blank. And then within that day, any notes that I have to take, any meetings I have, any sessions that I see, I write on the back of that page with the student's name, and then any notations that I might need to have for that. And then at the end of the week, those get filed into a big binder, and it's more of like a yearly calendar, but all the kids' names are in there. It would be a little bit more difficult for me to go back through and grab particular information, but you know, because in OneNote you could just search the student's name. Yeah. But I feel like this is the better way for me right now, just because that OneNote, when I didn't have access to it, just wasn't really working. Was there a question on that? We're good.
No, I was just admiring that organization.
Okay. So self-care, you already brought it up, right? It's so important. And, you know, the example that they use when you're getting on an airplane, right? That in the event of a lack of oxygen masks will descend from the ceiling. Please put your own mask on first before turning to your neighbor and helping them. So important. So I think this is a hard career. We are dealing with the most difficult situations and sometimes the most difficult students. And it can be very, very draining. And I do feel like we need to always have an idea about saving ourselves, but what works for you. And so I have in there, one person's yoga is another person's 350-pound tire toss, because I, for a long time, believed that things like yoga and Tai Chi were what you were supposed to do for self-care. And I actually was disinvited to coming back to a Tai Chi class because things that go slowly like that actually make me more anxious. And so I do a lot better with going to the gym and lifting super heavy weight and doing those kinds of things. That's more relaxing for me than a very Zen kind of yoga experience. So I think it's important for everyone to have an idea of what works for them. Is it knitting? Is it retail therapy? Is it cooking? Is it, I don't know, getting a manicure? Whatever it is, you just have to realize what it is, and then you have to do it. You have to make time for it, schedule it in your calendar. That's in my calendar too. because I just think it's crucial.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about yoga.
Okay. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. I admire people that can do it. It's just not, it's not my thing.
I can't even touch my toes, so yeah, no.
Okay. So practice what you preach. What would you tell a student to do in this situation? So a lot of times when students are coming to us asking questions, we're able to problem solve and maybe give a little bit of advice or just some different ideas on how they could deal with a conflict or a problem. What would you tell yourself if you were the student that came to ask that exact same question? So number one, I feel like it's so important to, when you have a conflict with a coworker, go directly to the person and work it out. Instead of letting it stew or, going and talking to a third person about it. Sometimes this doesn't happen often. I have an amazing staff that I work with, but there are times when we don't see eye to eye on things or something, and, going in, asking the person, would there be 10 minutes that we could talk about the situation, or I'm feeling a little bit of tension between us. The same thing though with parents. I feel like when we're in not great positions with parents, our instinct, or what's easier, is to sort of avoid that parent. Don't return the phone call. Don't return the email. Only have the bare minimum numbers of meetings. My experience has been fold that person in, have more contact with them, bring them in, have a follow-up meeting, follow up with a phone call, and really establish that relationship, because that's really where you're going to be getting that healing, and where, you can understand where they're coming from and they can understand where you're coming from. So it's hard though. It's hard to do it because I think most of us avoid conflict. And so it's difficult often to approach that person and say, I really feel like we need to talk about something. Avoiding gossip and maintaining confidentiality. If you gossip about other people, people are going to question whether they can trust you, right? Our entire job is basically being a secret keeper. And so if you are known as the school gossip, who's going to come to you when they have a problem? Watch out for the faculty room. This is not to be something negative that I'm saying against teachers, but I feel like because I'm spending so much of my time in my office with kids, the trade-off to that would be there's not a whole lot of time for teachers to sort of step into my office and ask me questions. So when I walk into the faculty room, I feel like a lot of times it almost like invites a breach of confidentiality, because there I am and somebody really needed to talk to me. And so they're going to say, hey, I wanted to tell you that so-and-so's parents let me know they're getting divorced, right? And then now 8 other people know that information that didn't need to know that information. So when this does happen, sometimes I'll say, oh, hey, can we talk about that later? Or, oh, hang on a second, let's step out into the hallway and talk about that, just to convey that. But I don't think it's done maliciously. Like I said, I think people just, like, they see me and they're like, oh yeah, I really needed to link up with Heidi, and there she is. And so then they say something that really not everybody in the room needed to know that. So, okay. I'm big on proofreading. Please understand that that was a purposeful typo on the top of there. I read my reports and I reread my reports and I reread my reports, and I tell my interns I actually love to edit. I was the editor for the Connecticut School Psych Journal for a couple of years. I love to edit more than probably anything else as far as writing goes. But there is nothing like a typo or having the wrong name in a report to make people doubt what kind of a psychologist you are. And I think with our use of templates and things like that, it's common to use those. And then we have this risk of, having the wrong name in there. And one time I received a report from another psychologist who I think must have had someone type his reports. So he must have dictated them or something. And then there was a typist that typed them. And the diagnosis that he had given the student was Asperger's. But this new typist obviously didn't know terminology. And so actually wrote in Asperger's as the diagnosis.
That's terrible.
Terrible, right? I mean, it's sort of humorous, I think, to think about it now or to use it as an example. of why you should proofread your reports. But I got that report and I was like, oh my goodness, how could this have happened, right? So I think it's crucial for people to proofread and proofread again and proofread again. And I know that's a part that my interns very much dislike, but I'm really pretty big on that. Also, I think taking the 5 seconds necessary to check and see who you addressed your email to every single email, right? Right before you press send, read that 2-line just one more time and make sure. Because I think, again, we are moving so quickly. And I know we use Outlook, so it autofills like as soon as you start to type a name, and it's just so easy to send information to the wrong person. And because so much of the information that we are sending is of a private nature, I'm just very, very vigilant about that. Getting involved in the field, going to national conferences, there's no better use of your money for the development of your profession. And then I love local conferences for networking and being able to have some FaceTime with some other psychologists or people in the field. The last time that I went to NASP, and it's been a while, but the last time that I went, I took that booklet that they had of all the offerings and I planned my days like I used to plan my college classes, like what 8 o'clock class can I get in? And then I'll leave that presentation a little bit early and get to the 9 o'clock session for this or that. I think the last time that I went, I attended 45 sessions or something like that. So I got a lot of value out of my registration dollars there. So I love national conferences. Once NASP gets to be within driving distance of where I live, I think I'll get back on the bandwagon. I hate to make anybody pay for flights, I think, when they're so far away. So that's it. I love conferences for those things. I was able to meet Dr. Sattler at a conference one time. Oh my goodness, I was like such a fangirl. It was so funny. But just all kinds of different conferences to keep up to date in the field and to meet some of the up and coming people and some of the real established professionals in our field, I think is great. Okay, so I think it's important to kind of have your finger on the pulse of what kids are reading and what they're watching and what video games they're playing. And I actually had a teacher come to me years ago saying that she thought that we needed to evaluate a student because the student was writing words that weren't even real words. And she thought for sure that the student must have an underlying written language learning disability because what the student wrote was, when I grow up, I want to be Fergalicious, referring to Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas. And since the teacher didn't know this, she assumed or just believed that the student had a learning disability because she was writing these gibberish words when it was actually words of a song. So, kids are right now really into Fortnite and Five Nights at Freddy's, those video games. Or I had a student the other day tell me that his favorite movie was Pacific Rim. And I said, well, what is it? What is it? He told me a little bit about it. And I went home that weekend and I watched Pacific Rim so that we could have something to talk about, so that I could meet them sort of halfway. And what do you like about the movie? Or what is it about that video game that you like so much? Or when they're talking about, Fortnite skins, I understand what that means. So I try to keep it current with those kinds of things. The way that I try to quote unquote read the books that they're reading is that I will often check those books out of either our school library or my local library on CD and listen to the books, again, just so that we can have some common talking points. I also have actually everybody in my school this year has a sign outside of their classrooms or their offices that indicates what books they're reading right now. I've had that up there for years, actually, and kids will often make comments about that. So I just sort of rotate the books that I read, the kid-friendly books that I read. And kids will stop in, or kids will make comments to me about that, like when I see them in the hallway, how much they liked that book, or did I finish that book yet? And so I think it's a really nice way of creating just another relationship point with children. Prevent foot and mouth itis. So I think it's really important, especially for interns or people who are new into districts, to realize what the district policies are or the town opinions. Like, is it a conservative town or is it a liberal town? What can you say about things like birth control? If a student were to ask you about that, there are some school districts or some towns that would say that abstinence is the only thing that you can talk about, whereas there are other districts where you could talk about some other options. That's just sort of one example of where I would want to know what the district policies or town opinions were on certain things. Staying up to date in the field, subscribing to listservs and reading journals, obviously, blogs. I love the blogs. And then I really, really enjoy the Facebook groups that are out there, and obviously podcasts. I'm always searching, I typically like to load my podcasts in the morning, like right before I get into my car, and just, I have a rotation of different ones that I listen to, some that are school psych related and obviously some that are my other interests, but just really trying to stay current with some of the things that are out there in our field. The other thing, or one of the other things, is that even if you don't believe in something, knowing about it, because most parents are going to go to the internet before they come to you about something. So things like vaccinations, or does sugar or red dye have anything to do with ADHD? All of those kinds of things. So when a parent brings it up, I will say, oh, I'm not really sure about that. Let me look into it, or let me do a little bit more research about it. And then sure enough, it usually comes back around either with that parent or another parent. So just trying to always be sort of searching and researching for different things that are sort of hot topics in psychology or education. I run a lot of groups in my school. So I love counseling groups and tend to run more process groups. I don't do a whole lot of things like worksheets or anything like that. So some of the more popular groups that I do run, have run, I always have a very, very healthy banana splits group going. So banana splits is actually a curriculum that is available for purchase that deals with families that are split up most of the time, divorce, but for other reasons as well. I run my banana splits groups grade-based. So I run third grade group, a fourth grade group, and then a fifth grade group. And the kids who have been with me since third grade, so my fifth graders, I often think that, goodness, they could run the group on their own. It's just a really nice opportunity for kids to see that there are other children in the school that might be in a similar situation to them. I was a child of divorce, and I would say that we didn't really talk about it in school at all. And so I met who I believed to be my first friend who also had a divorce in her family in fifth grade. But now when I reflect back and know what the statistics were in the mid to late 70s, that probably 50% of the kids that I sat in class with were in a similar situation as I was, but we didn't talk about it. So I really felt like I was the only one. Yeah. And I always share that story with the kids at school so that they understand why I think it's really important that if they want to, that they participate in the group. It's voluntary. I do have parents sign consent for those kids to join me, but it's voluntary. It meets over lunchtime. I never go into the cafeteria if a kid doesn't show up and say, hey, all the divorced kids, it's time for banana splits. And the kids seem to really, really enjoy it. At the end of the year in banana splits, there's a picture on there of the quilts that are hanging in my office. So at the end of each year, the children that are in banana splits take one of those quilt squares home, and they need to complete it with a family member. So, and it could be anything, a drawing of their family or something that their family likes to do together or something like that. And then they're hanging in my office, and the kids always really like to see them from year to year. And especially if older siblings have participated in banana splits, they like to find their square and then their older sibling's square from a couple of quilts ago. A lot of my kids like to do different volunteer jobs around the school. So it's a really nice way, if we're going to be the bulletin board crew or something, that we can work on social skills, we can work on leadership. I've also had some of my groups who might be working on things like organization and social skills run the school store. It's a really nice way of talking about different organizational strategies, who's going to be the foreman of our job today, who's going to be a worker bee, those kinds of things. I have previously run book clubs where, just like a traditional book club, we would read maybe a chapter or so a week and then talk about the different situations that might have arisen in the book. I have a number of books that I tend to use for things like that, things that are books that might deal with peer pressure or bullying or something like that. Also, in the couple of years ago, bereavement groups, those kiddos. One year I had 9 kids in the bereavement group. That was a challenging time just because we had so much grief and bereavement in the school with, a fairly large number of children. And they always really loved to do fundraisers. And then we would give the money, to the charity that would speak to the reason why they were in the bereavement group. They always felt like doing the fundraiser gave them power against that disease, whether it be cancer or something like that. So they always really loved to do the fundraisers. Let's see what my office looks like. So I use a lot of the zones of regulation. So maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I went and got that giant zones speedometer blown up at Staples. I think it costs like $5 or something, and it's larger than a poster size. So that the large metal pan that is on it that basically turns it into a magnetic board is the largest size of, I think it's an oil drip pan. I just went to like AutoZone and got the largest oil drip pan and then glued the poster to the oil drip pan, and then that's attached to the wall of my office. And so all of the kids in my groups, every kid has a magnet. And then when they come in to check in for group, they place their magnet in the zone that they're feeling. And they all really love that. And then they get to take their magnets home with them at the end of the year. This is the calm corner in my office. So it's a, great big sort of comfy armchair. And kids can come in anytime as long as I'm not testing. So what I have on the door of my office, I have one of those tap lights. And if the light is on, kids cannot come in. That usually means that I'm testing or meeting with a parent. So as long as the light isn't on, anybody could come in and take a little break in Calm Corner. There's a little timer that's on the wall, and all of the kids know that the parameters for a break would be 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 5 minutes. At the end of that time, the timer goes off. I'll take just a couple of seconds to say anything you want to talk about. Are you feeling better? What zone are you in? Things like that. But also in Calm Corner, I have a couple of different resources that are there. So some zones information, Take 5 breathing, which we really use a lot of in my school. The kids have really latched on to that. They really like that. How big is my problem? Some different grounding activities, things like that. On the bottom there and the floor, the box that's next to the Calm Corner are some glitter bottles that we've created. And there's a clipboard that has some coloring pages, different things like that that kids might like to use when they're taking their break. This is outside of my office. This is a free high five. The kids absolutely love this, and it cost me absolutely no money. It's a drawing, or it's a tracing of my hand on a piece of construction paper, and it says free high fives, and it's right outside of my office. And that is honestly one of the best things that I have probably done in my office in the last 5 years.
That's great.
They love it, but all day long you hear slap, slap, slap. It's great. It's great. The kids absolutely love it. And it will eventually fall apart just because everybody's touching it all the time. And there's a day that, after it's fallen off and I haven't gotten to it, everybody's like, where's the high five? Where's the high five? It's so cute. So, okay. So what can you do this year? These are the easy things, right? Self-promotion. If somebody asks you to do something, pretty much I say that I can do it as long as I'm qualified, like trained to do it. I can do that, or I have to. I rarely would ever say it's not my job, or I don't have time for it in my schedule, or I'm so how about you email me for an update? Oh, I can't stand that one. Like when a teacher says, or a parent says, could we get some regular communication or something going? And then the teacher was like, well, can you email me? And then I'll send you back an update. I'll forget. I just end up setting a lot of reminders or, 2 weeks ahead and put in my calendar as an appointment, email those parents to give them an update on group or something. So I set those notifications for myself instead of saying to somebody, I'm so busy. How about you email me an update? I just think it sounds better. Basically, we're saying the same thing. I feel very, very strongly that psychologists should know achievement tests. So that was a really big part of my training in Pennsylvania, because when I worked there, really the school psychologist did all of the assessment for the evaluations. So that coming to Connecticut was a new sort of perspective on assessment to have the resource teachers do the achievement tests. So I would say for starting out school psychologists, if you have not specifically been trained on achievement tests, I think that it would behoove you to sit down and spend a little bit of time with a resource teacher or ask if you can observe them doing the testing. I just think having the knowledge of the tests makes you all the more valuable at a meeting when we are talking about the results. So it's really hard, I think, to sort of combine all of these different pieces of information and see, sort of to triangulate it and see what comes out as a true weakness if you're not familiar with this giant piece that we're sort of, assessing and hanging our hats on. So I feel pretty strongly about that. If you don't know the answer to something, know where to get it. That's easy, right? I think there's no harm in saying to someone, I'm not really sure. Can I get back to you on that? And I think that that's a really good practice. I also try to get back to people within a day when they've emailed me or called me. I try. Sometimes though things get lost in my inbox. So, but I do try very, very hard to set a one-day turnaround. Volunteering to speak at things like PTA or PTO meetings, explaining to people what the school psychologist does, because based on what school you're in, I think that they may not know. And I think that it's nice it's extremely important for people to understand all of the different things that a school psychologist can do. I would say participate in spirit days or community events. Like if you can, dress up for Halloween when everybody at school is dressing up for Halloween, or if it's Spirit Day and everybody's wearing their school t-shirts on the first Friday of the month, you should do that too. Also things like community events. I try, we have a jogathon every year in our district that is a fundraiser for kids at the elementary level. I attempt to go. I can't always go, but if I'm free that Saturday morning, I'll make an appearance. And I just think it's really nice for people to understand that you're, a really crucial piece of that school's puzzle. Getting into the classrooms and learning about the curriculum, because if you don't know what third graders are learning in math, how will you know if somebody is not on target, right? And so I think it's really great to be able to say, if a parent calls and says, I'm really worried about my child because they're really struggling in division, for you to be able to say, oh, I think division is something that we really introduce in fourth grade, but let me check with this child's teacher and check and make sure. But I think that they're just now learning that, or that's a skill that is really fairly new to them. So struggling isn't something that, I'd be really concerned about. Making yourself an indispensable asset in your school. So again, running groups and clubs, chaperoning field trips, if you can, right? If they ask, and if you can, I would say that's really great to do that. Participate in assemblies, field day, right? Go out to field day, run a station if you can. Cover for breaks. Sometimes if I'm walking down the hallway and I see a teacher, on their cell phone in the hallway, and they're trying to make some sort of a phone call, but they're looking into their classroom to make sure that the kids are, on task and doing what they're supposed to be doing, I will say to the teacher, go ahead and take your call. I can stand in here for a minute. I think that that's just a really nice way of supporting your coworkers. Running a club. So again, in the intro, it said I do the environmental club, I do the drama club. I have previously run student council. I do the sign language club. Those are all before and after school clubs. And it's just a really nice way, I think, for kids to see us in a more natural environment. And I get to see them in a very natural environment instead of the testing setting or a classroom observation or something, to see how they do, with other kids and things like that. I love doing the clubs. I think it's a blast. I'm never the disciplinarian, right? I'm always pretty straight with my administrators about that. I will process an event with a student. I will talk about next time, this is what you could do, or next time, what would you do, or where do you think things went wrong here? But I am never, ever, ever going to be the person who pulls a kid off the field trip or makes them stay in from recess or anything like that. And I do think that helping people celebrate what they do at school, everyone is working really, really hard. So you can look online. There's a whole big list of different school employee celebration days or awareness days. Beyond that, of Teacher Appreciation Week or American Education Week or whatever that is. There's a School Lunch Lady Day. There's a Custodian Appreciation Day. And it's easy to send an email out to staff. Hey, today is Custodian Appreciation Day. Make sure you say hello to the custodians and tell them that they're doing a great job, or to make a poster for all the kids to sign. These are things that I've done in the past, and I think it really means a lot to people. Goodness, there's so much to talk about. Writing an article for your school newsletter if you can, providing workshops to either paraprofessionals, we call them teaching assistants in my district, or to parents. Get something in your office that is enticing to kids. It's a great way to either get them in or get them out. And that's actually where the guinea pigs kind of came in. Oh goodness gracious, probably 8 years ago or so, came into my office one day and there was a guinea pig in my office. And I wasn't really sure what it was doing in there. I did not have any intentions on getting a guinea pig. And it was just kind of showed up there in a cage with the food and everything. And the school secretary called and she said that a family had dropped it off because the mom said that the child had talked to me and I said that I would take it. That never happened. But they were moving and needed to show the house, and the mom really wanted the guinea pig to get out of there, and the kid had said, oh, Dr. Mack will take it. So I ended up with this guinea pig, and she was amazing, and her name was Kenya, and she was just very, very sweet. The kids all loved her, and she kind of met her demise, a natural death. And then we got Finley, and he just actually passed away a couple of weeks ago. And now I have the two new school guinea pigs, Mooney and Myrtle. And it's a really nice way for kids to come in and say hi to them in between like lunch and recess. It's very controlled. It's also a really nice thing that, if a kid is reluctant to go back to class, if I can't get them out of my office, I'll say, here are the guinea pigs and I'll walk you back to class. And we scoop up the guinea pigs and then off we go to class. It's just a really nice way and really nice connection. If your school allows pets, to have something in the office that the kids really like. And then, it's a talking point, and, parents come in and check in on the guinea pigs when they're in the school. It's really cute. Okay. And then another thing is celebrating School Psychology Awareness Week with pride. So I love SPA. It's my favorite week of the year. And so I do a theme every year. This is dating back to 2012. In 2012, I did a Lego theme. So I had asked on Free Cycle, which is like a local trading, swapping site. I think most towns or like larger areas have a Free Cycle. So I was able to get those big Lego blocks, and every teacher, actually every staff person got one. And then I just made a little sticker on those 4 blocks, and it said, thanks for helping our students build bright futures. And then that year I made like Lego shoes, and I made a Lego headband that I wore that year. So it was all sort of Lego themed. Then the next year I actually did a You Rock theme. And that summer, on my bucket list, ever since we had moved to Connecticut, on my bucket list was working tobacco, because it was so foreign to me living in Pennsylvania. I didn't understand what this whole practice was. So I said, someday I'm going to work tobacco. And so we did. My husband, my daughter, and I worked tobacco at a local farm. And the particular field had these giant rocks, and we just kept stepping on them. And I actually said to the farmer, can I take about 100 of those rocks? And he said, sure, please do. And so I took them in these giant buckets and I cleaned them up. And then I just write you. And then every single staff person got a U rock that year for School Psychology Awareness Week. Cost me nothing, right? The next year was a gratitude theme. So I did these little magnets for everybody. Like a thrift store find. I think I found like a bag of 100 of those magnets for like $1 or something. And so everybody got one with that little quote on there. And then I also that year gave 3 sticky notes to every staff person and indicated that they needed to write a gratitude note to another staff person and give those away. So each person had to give away 3. That was really nice. 2016 was a kindness theme. So I had a kindness wreath outside of my office. And I just put add a ribbon to our wreath when you do an act of kindness for someone. And then I did, I got those Choose Kindness bracelets on Etsy. I think I paid $50 for 100 bracelets. And so that was one day. And then later on in the week, I gave everybody those kind bars and it said, your kindness does not go unnoticed, right? And then that was my kindness wall outside of my office. 2017, I did a pineapple theme. So I did these little wish bracelets for everybody that just had that little meaning of the pineapple. That was like, usually I do a gift on Monday and Friday of School Psychology Awareness Week and then send emails out every day. And then on the Friday with the pineapple theme, I found this quote about pineapples. I thought this was so great. So the average pineapple makes about 4.5 cups of fruit. It's about 36 ounces of pineapple chunks, but cans of pineapples typically are like 20 ounces or 46 ounces, meaning that a single pineapple is more than what you need for a single container. So every time you eat a pineapple from a container, somebody else somewhere has the rest of your pineapple. So you're basically breaking bread or sharing the fruit with a stranger, either from hundreds of miles away or from the classroom across the hall. So I gave everybody on the staff just one of those little pineapple cups. So I try to do it, fairly inexpensively. Most of the stuff is like either, I search around for weeks on like when pineapple's on sale or whatever. This year, the NASP theme was unlocking potential. So I grabbed onto that. And on the Monday, I gave everybody a keychain that was just about unlocking potential, Happy School Psychology Awareness Week. Those were like a bunch of like these antique keys I got on Amazon for, I think like $10 or something, and then just put a little string on them to make them into a keychain. And then I had a broken keyboard that didn't work anymore. And so I popped all the keys off of it. So the idea of like passwords are unlocking potential as well. So who helps you unlock your potential? And so those were little paper clips. And so I gave that to each staff person and they were to give it away to the person that helps them to unlock their potential. And then on the Friday of SPA, I did a key lime seltzer, like seltzer bar in the teacher's room. So key lime, just trying to keep with the theme. Okay, so wrapping up. So I think, again, just my idea of school psychology is being a piece of the puzzle, believing in yourself. This is my absolute favorite sign that I have in my office. A child gave me that probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I just love that because I do believe in them and I believe in this field and I believe in the people that work so hard to work for kids. And I just think it's an incredible field and I'm just so excited about it. And thank you for listening. That's Kenya.
So cute.
So cute.
Adorable.
Oh. Do you take Kenya home on the weekends? Or
Yeah. So Kenya has passed. She was the first one, but yes,
Okay.
the guinea pigs, actually, they're in the same room with me right now. They've been so good because I thought for sure as soon as they heard my voice that they would start whistling. So yes, I take them home on the weekends. So they live at school, like overnight by themselves, Monday through Friday. And then Friday night, I bring them home. I know that some teachers have like classroom pets and they let the kids take them home. I just feel like that is a huge responsibility and possibly even a burden on a family that like isn't a pet family, or even like to have someone else's animal. So kids always say that, can I take them home on the weekends? And I'm like, no, I'm just not into that. But they're great. They're great pets. They're super easy.
That makes sense.
Very cool. You're so thrifty, and I feel extremely inadequate as a school psychologist now.
Should I click out of my presentation? Can I see?
Yes, please do, so that we can see you. I have a couple of thoughts for you. I loved all of these ideas, and I think that they're so just energizing, for not only for you in your office and with your kids, but for the building and for the school culture. So I love all of some of them fairly simple, like sending an email on those special days for faculty and staff. I'm wondering, I had an early career person inbox me a message just today, and this person said, I can't ask the lead psych, because last time I asked, they said, you should know by now. And so, and then when she posted somewhere in one of the forums or something, that same supervisor was upset with her. And so I wonder about that. I mean, I feel so terrible about that, because if you can't ask, if you can't ask things that you don't know, then, I don't know what else you would do, but just wing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I have a really great diagnostic team at school. So it's very easy, for people to send an email out and just ask questions, or what would you guys do in this situation? We have a monthly diagnostic meeting, so we get some FaceTime with one another. But I've often loved the Facebook groups and things most for that, when someone will post, I love the community aspect. Like when someone posts on a Sunday afternoon, oh my gosh, I don't have my ABAS manual. Can somebody look this up? Like, I love that people do that. But also just to be able to bounce that off of people. And I actually I feel bad for very isolated school psychologists, the people who are the only one in a district, or the only one in a intermediate unit. In Pennsylvania, you would have these giant areas that you had to cover, and you might be the only one. So I think it's really important for those people to get some kind of peer consultation, or just a buddy that they could talk to. Maybe it's someone from their cohort, that you could reconnect with. And that's tough.
I totally agree. Yeah. So early career folk out there, I think, keep connecting. And if we don't have questions, it must mean we're not, still growing. And I think that would be really sad.
Yeah.
I'm nothing but questions. So we had some great little comments. Somebody mentioned in the poll that words of wisdom that helped her, although she's retired now. She said, I loved my supervisor's goal for me in my first year. Keep your nose above water and learn to bob up and down.
Love it.
Oh, that's really good.
And while we're having, while you were speaking, we were having a little sidebar here about you need to be recruited to the communications committee on NASP, who designed some of those spa activities and whatnot, because that's some great stuff you had there.
Yeah,
really creative.
I do. I love that. I think it's funny though, because School Psychology Awareness Week often coincides with Teacher Appreciation Week, and so there's a difference. Just those words, appreciation versus awareness, are so interesting because they mean different things. So Teacher Appreciation Week gets these gifts to teachers. We appreciate you. School Psychology Awareness Week, we feel like we need to be telling people about our career. I don't have a problem doing that, obviously, but I just think that's so funny, and the difference in those A words. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm looking for any last minute questions if anybody sees anything, but I think that, really really great stuff that will get people thinking. And certainly, I'm not even early career, and I'm just like, oh yeah, no, that was what I need to keep in mind too. I want to also remind people that I think we're going to be back on the 6th, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about selective mutism, which we had an episode previously that was really great. So you guys might want to check that out, and then tune us in for kind of this follow-up part 2, selective mutism. But okay, we've just got people, saying that it was, thank you for sharing all this. And did I miss anything, Rebecca?
Nope, I think we've just got some appreciative, kind comments.
Shout out to my colleagues and intern who are watching.
Eric has his fan club always.
Yes, a big Eric fan club out there tonight. And I like the pressure on Eric to write his book, because I totally agree. We need to keep that pressure up.
Slowly, but surely.
And just wanted to remind anyone who's listening, after this broadcast, after the live version, feel free to continue to the conversation and questions and comments on the Facebook pages or on Twitter, or in comments on YouTube. And thank you for being here tonight, for those of you who are with us.
All right. Night, everybody.
Thank you so much, Heidi.
Bye.
Thank you, Heidi.